Hi friends, I'm Uma Shankar Pandey and this is the Dr. USP channel. Traditionally, sociologists have seen production and consumption as binaries, as two distinct things. The growth of service industry and the new technologies have led to the identification of the concept of the prosumer. Sociologist George Ritzer and his colleagues see production and consumption as a continuum on the prosumption scale. Let us see New Age capitalism prosumption theory explained in this video. There are three consequences of the prosumption theory. Firstly, there is a growth of unpaid labor. Secondly, there is the availability of free products. Thirdly, the concept of scarcity has given way to the concept of abundance. While producer capitalism is singly exploitative, consumer capitalism is doubly exploitative, prosumer capitalism is synergistically doubly exploitative. The concept of prosumption was first introduced by Alvin Toffler in 1980. Since then, it has been developed for use in sociological analysis by George Ritzer and his colleagues. Prosumption theory aims to overcome the production-consumption binary and suggests that prosumption is, in fact, a primary process that undergirds both production and consumption. Prosumption combines the words production and consumption to describe the interrelated process. It refers to economic activity in which people both consume and produce at the same time. For example, paid employees of Facebook provide a basic architecture for the site. It is the unpaid Facebook prosumers who provide the content that makes Facebook an attractive site for other prosumers. What we have traditionally thought of as production requires at least some consumption, for example, of raw materials and labor time. Similarly, consumption involves production of such things as needs and desires, as well as the work needed to be able to obtain goods and services in shopping venues as diverse as fast food restaurants and online shopping sites. The rise of the service industry and the emergence of postmodern theory have led to the blurring of distinctions between the binaries of production and consumption. Among these is the development of technologies such as the internet. Illustrative examples of prosumption are 3D printers, self-scanner machines, ATMs, and medical technologies that allow people to measure their own vitals at home. We should think in terms of prosumption as production, what we have traditionally thought of as production, and prosumption as consumption, traditionally thought of as consumption. All economic processes and epochs always involve a mix of production and consumption. In that sense, pure production and pure consumption are impossibilities. In this diagram, we see prosumption as a continuum. On the left end of the scale is prosumption as production. On the right end of the scale is prosumption as consumption. So on the left end we have what was earlier known as pure production. On the right end we have what was known as pure consumption. And in between there is the balanced prosumption, balance between both production and consumption. Prosumption as production predominates in organizations usually seen as focused on production and work, for example factories and office, while production as consumption continues to occur in organizations, malls, fast food restaurants for example, devoted to consumption. Prosumption takes place on digital platforms, especially social media sites. It lies towards the middle of the continuum we saw in the earlier video. David Ducey in 2017 enumerates 5 types of prosumption: collaboration in product development, customer self-service, digital prosumption, bricolage, for example do it yourself, and collaborative peer-to-peer prosumption. The first 3 of these types tend to be exploitative. The last 2 are seen as more empowering. Technologies are now being developed that both produce and consume at the same time without the direct involvement of the human prosumer. An example of this is wearable technologies and even the smartphone, for example, that read people's bodies and follow their movements, which is consumption, to send this information to other technologies, which is production for further compilation and analysis. Ritzer envisions a dystopian future in which human lives are organized through an Internet of Things, presuming smart machines in contact with one another, making decisions for human users without their conscious input. He suggests that we can understand the history of modern society as having moved from an age of producer capitalism to consumer capitalism to prosumer capitalism. The focus on prosumption also requires that we rethink familiar sociological concepts such as alienation, exploitation, and the nature of work. First, in some instances, people are forced to pay more for products than their actual worth. Capitalists play a role in this exploitation by manipulating cycles of supply and demand. Second, the consumer society encourages hyper-consumption. Ritzer and Jurgensen say that prosumer capitalism is characterized by three unique features. First, there is a trend towards unpaid rather than paid labor. Second, prosumer capitalism offers many products at no cost. For example, access to Facebook and other platforms. Third, the system is marked by a new abundance where scarcity once predominated. Producer capitalism is singly exploitative. Consumer capitalism is doubly exploitative. It creates value by exploiting both worker and the consumer. Prosumer capitalism is synergistically doubly exploitative. Prosumers are engaged in productive and consumptive activities at one and same time. They are exploited as both producer and consumer at one and the same time. Prosumers do work for free that once would have been done by paid employees. Early examples of this kind of prosumption included getting customers to pump their own gas and having people use self-checkout machines at grocery stores. Since there is no formal relationship between businesses and prosumers, there is no long-term obligation to pay them for their work. In prosumer capitalism, products are offered for free because profit lies elsewhere. Prosumption is connected to an information economy in which data on people's behaviors and attributes can be sold for profit. This data is more important to prosumer capitalism than the commodities that are exchanged through prosumption. The information about prosumers that is provided by them free of charge and is being accumulated in the form of big data on such sites. This information has great value to capitalist firms in terms of knowledge about the tastes and interests of potential future prosumers. This is clearly the case with an internet site such as Facebook, which is not overtly selling anything but earns huge money. The users provide that data, for example, preferences for various products, every time they click, for example, on products available on Amazon.com. It then uses the data in targeting users with ads for products related to their preferences. Google uses extracted search data to sell targeted ad space to advertisers through an increasingly automated auction system. The growth of prosumer capitalism is part of a more general shift away from economies of scarcity to economies of abundance. The information society introduces technologies that allow the previously unimaginable creation and dissemination of information. This focus on information is not just restricted to the internet economy. It is possible to offer a more optimistic scenario based especially on non-profit sites on the internet. These are controlled by prosumers that operate for their benefit rather than for the profitability of the capitalists. Prosumption can be empowering because people are in control of both what they produce and consume. They do so to benefit themselves and not the bottom line of capitalistic enterprises. Jeremy Rifkin in 2015, in his book The Zero Marginal Cost Society, argued that the collaboration that occurs on prosumption sites enables the offering of many things free of charge or close to it on the Internet of Things. Prosumption is capable of challenging an old system or producing a new one that is empowering, democratic, and of benefit to all involved. Thanks for staying along, friends. As always, it was a delight having you here. I'll be back with another video very soon. Till then, have a great time.